Movies come in all shapes and sizes. Some have large studio-backed budgets, enabling the filmmakers to hire a large cast of well-known actors, along with creating a mind-boggling array of special effects with their hundreds of millions. On the flip side, many films get released every year without crossing the $10 million mark. Independent film is a vital part of the art form, but it's often the area that struggles the most. By its nature, independent films are made with full creative freedom largely intact. This also means, though, that they don't have the financial backing of major studios and have to make do with what little funding they can scrounge up. Trade-offs are the only way to make the whole equation come out right. In most cases, this means hiring a less experienced cast and crew. It also limits most productions on the complexity of their shots and special effects. In 2006, a group of filmmakers decided to make their own full-length independent movie, but in a style no independent creator had dared try before: 3D animation. To wrap up this 3-part series covering films about remixed fairy tales, we have
Hoodwinked, baby!
Hoodwinked is a twist on the story of Little Red Riding Hood. It opens with the cops showing up at Granny's house, having to apprehend 4 suspects: Little Red, the wolf, the woodsman, and Granny herself. Initially, it seems clear who the culprits are.
So this looks pretty open and shut. Little Miss Rosie Capes making covert deliveries to the Goody Tycoon. Wolfie tries to eat them both. Then Crazy Flannel Pants with the axe here busting swinging vigilante style. Take them downtown, boys.
It's the woods, Chief. We don't have a downtown.
But then Detective Nikki Flippers arrives and thinks there might just be more here than meets the eye.
Slow down, Chief. We've got 4 suspects, and that means 4 stories. And if you get people talking long enough, someone will spill the beans.
Beans?
He gives each of the suspects a chance to tell their version of the story, each one revealing more about the events that transpired that fateful day.
Why don't you explain how this all began?
Well, like any other day. I was making deliveries for my granny's goodie shop.
Little Red was bringing the famous Puckett family recipe book to her granny for safekeeping from the infamous Goody Bandit, a mysterious thief bent on stealing seemingly everyone's recipes.
You saying this guy's a cop?
Worse, he's a reporter.
Oh, what?
And I've got the real story.
The wolf was investigating a lead on the stolen recipes for his newspaper column, attempting to uncover the truth behind the Goody Bandit.
Oh, I am working to make good my callback.
Yo, what?
He's an actor.
No, boy.
The woodsman isn't actually a real woodsman. He's just an actor practicing for a role in
Paul's Bunion Cream has the soothing formula to make the bunions head for the hills.
This guy's a loon.
Watch it, Chief. My mama's half loon.
and Granny.
I noticed you have 3 G's tattooed on the back of your neck.
Well, Granny isn't who anyone thinks she is. Throughout the evening, as the truth is revealed and the pieces start being put together, it starts to become clear just who the evil Goody Bandit is. Released in 2006 by the newly formed Weinstein Company, Hoodwinked found itself caught between poor critical reception and enormous box office returns. It has since found something of a cult following, largely from those who grew up watching it. To this day, it's actually still one of my all-time favorite movies. Why exactly?
What can I say? I was raised by wolves.
So no, Hoodwinked doesn't have a particularly mind-blowing story, and it's pretty obvious for anyone over 10 who the bad guy is. Why then has Hoodwinked stuck with me after all these years then? For starters, I want to contrast Hoodwinked with the other Shrek ripoff we looked at last week. Hoodwinked, aside from its actual animation, utilizes other basic aspects of filmmaking to enhance its story. It plays with lighting, dynamic camera movement and transitions, and, well, it has one of the catchiest original soundtracks, period.
Here's a story I hope you'll like. It's the one about the girl riding on her bike. I know. I'm barking my clothes. I'm a tree critter.
Because red is blue doesn't make much sense, but red is blue.
Now, none of these are executed in the most innovative of ways, minus the music, but the film is competently shot, and that's not something I can say about every animated feature. Especially when compared to the dull cinematography of Happily Never After, Hoodwinked stands out instantly. Beyond passable camera work, though, Hoodwinked has a script that I believe is one of the funniest ever written for an animated film.
What's with the handcuffs on a little girl? Her wrists slip right out. How about a cage?
Bring in the cage!
I was being sarcastic.
Sarcasm, strike the cage.
Truly, this is one of the few films that has always made me laugh, and the surprisingly killer casting definitely helps a lot. From clever banter between characters to witty jokes sprinkled inside the world itself to the subtle commentary present throughout, Hoodwinked takes the stale formula of twisted fairy tales and breathes life back into it. It simultaneously twists and also pays homage to classic fairy tales in a way that I think Shrek wanted to. Hoodwinked feels less how would an adult look at fairy tales, and more like it's asking, if fairy tales were real, how would they work? And to take things even further, Hoodwinked is itself kind of a critique on the twisted fairy tales subgenre, as it bypasses many obvious kid jokes that plague Shrek. I'm not saying it's full of terribly highbrow humor by any means, but it doesn't feel lazy in the same way Shrek sometimes does. I love the way Hoodwinked messes with the tropes we've come to expect from these types of films. It goes beyond adult jokes in a kid's movie. Throughout the film, virtually every character we're introduced to is different from what we would traditionally assume about them. The wolf isn't the bad guy. It's you little bunny rabbit. Red can hold her own. The woodsman is literally not a woodsman, and Granny kicks so much butt. You'd even expect Twitchy to be a dumb character like Scrat or something, but he actually saves the day.
The criminal you're looking for cannot be found at the bottom of the mountain. He resides at the top, in a cave fortress where my companions are trying to detain him.
The story directly reinforces its message through the writing, and it makes the message of the movie much more impactful, along with making the movie absolutely hilarious. At the same time, it's also much more of a family movie than Shrek is. It's genuinely clever with enough fun things happening to keep kids engaged, while also nailing its mature jokes aimed at adults.
We are in a pickle. I blame myself. That bunny was worthless, not to mention he wrote the directions on an Easter egg, which is very hard to read.
Oh, we're gonna die in here.
Hey now, that's what they said at the Alamo.
It's cynical and sarcastic while still being wholesome in the end. It's a balancing act that is somehow handled perfectly. And the music. Why is every single song in this movie a certified banger?
Avalanche is coming and I do not feel prepared. It's rumbling like a mountain lion. If I say that I'm scared.
It's got well-developed themes too. I mean, they literally spell it out for you in the beginning.
Can't judge a book by its cover. If you want to know the truth, you've got to flip through the pages.
But still, the film reinforces its message against prejudice throughout the story. And beyond not judging people based solely upon how they look, Hoodwinked also teaches that we shouldn't assume people's intentions based on our perspective of their actions alone. What I love most about Hoodwinked, though, more than how much it makes me laugh and more than the nostalgia I have for this film, is that its creators had an idea, a story they wanted to tell, and they just went for it. Yes, they made mistakes, a lot of mistakes, but in the end, they still created something special. They told a funny story with a timeless message. They created engaging characters and gave them exceptionally clever dialogue. They crafted a film that my dad could take my brother and I to go see in theaters when I was 7 and he was 5. I think this might be the first movie I remember seeing in theaters. And that film, that story, left its impact on 7-year-old me. An impact that's still resonating 14 years later. An impact that includes getting to know people for who they really are. But it's also inspired me that good stories are worth telling, and they're worth telling well. You'll never have all of the resources you want to tell that story, but it's worth giving it your all and trying anyway. And no matter how many people that story reaches, it can impact them in ways you probably didn't expect. I don't think Corey and Todd Edwards or any member of the team that worked alongside them set out to inspire people, but they did. In closing, Hoodwinked is a great, hilarious film that's carried by its excellent script and voice acting. Not perfectly, but a whole lot better than it should have been. It's a clever, hysterical satire that even today feels fresh and original. Just as the film asks you not to judge a book by its cover, I ask that you give it a shot in spite of the way it looks. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
You can take the critter out of the tree, but you can't take the tree out of the tree. Critter's knee.